Is Battlefield 1 worth $60? Is it a fun game? Should I buy it? These are comments I have been getting a ton on this channel as of late. The first thing I have to say is that if a game looks fun to you, just go ahead and buy it. You don't need to look to other people's opinions to justify your purchase. You may like something that I dislike, you may dislike something that I like, and that's perfectly okay. But I'm going to talk about the game nonetheless, because I do want to talk about it. If you don't want to watch the whole video, I'm just going to say right away that this game is a ton of fun and it's definitely worth your money. But I'm going to go more in depth. Let's start with the good. For starters, it looks beautiful. I think we have finally reached a game that looks better than Crysis 3. I think this is, in my opinion, the best looking game that has been released yet. And it runs very smooth. I never have it drop below 120 frames, and I'm playing at 1440. This game runs well and it looks great. Now I know graphics shouldn't be a selling point of a game, but in my opinion, graphics should be a selling point of a game if the gameplay is also good. If you have good gameplay and good graphics, you have the best of both worlds, assuming it runs well, and Battlefield 1 definitely does, at least on PC. But the gameplay itself is great as well. The first thing I noticed when I started playing Battlefield 1 was that the maps were designed so much better than Battlefield 4, and they feel almost reminiscent to that of Battlefield 3. You have areas that are very clearly made for infantry combat, and then areas that are very clearly advantageous for vehicles that you just kind of don't want to be caught in. The whole point of Battlefield has always been infantry combat with vehicles backing you up. But I hated Battlefield 4's maps because they felt unfinished, they didn't get playtested enough, and it made vehicles incredibly strong even though they were statistically weaker than Battlefield 3 because you couldn't really fight against them, the maps were too open with not enough cover. Battlefield 1 thankfully does not have this issue. Now there is one map that I greatly dislike, and this is sort of the open vehicle map that every Battlefield game has, but other than that one map, I can't think of any of them that I dislike. Now that's not to say that vehicles and infantry don't intermingle, they definitely do, but there are areas that are just simply more advantageous to be in if you are infantry, and the same can be said for vehicles. But they do definitely cross over, and you will be killed by a tank many times. Moving on to the gunplay, they thankfully brought back Battlefield 3's recoil system. Another huge complaint I had about Battlefield 4 was that the guns didn't recoil or didn't give you enough feedback to what was actually happening. The gun just kind of shook around and then your bullets went in this weird cone spread and you didn't have any idea where the bullets were really going. And it led to you feeling like my crosshair was right over the enemy or my iron sights were right over the enemy, yet my bullets were magically missing somehow. In Battlefield 3, when you shot at someone, it jerked your whole screen up, and the bullets more or less went where your gun was pointing, so as long as you managed that recoil, you were going to hit your target. This gave a lot more feedback to the player and felt less frustrating. Battlefield 1 thankfully takes this approach and brings back Battlefield 3's recoil system, which was simply so much better. And as a result, when you're shooting at someone, you know when you should hit someone and when you shouldn't, at least most of the time. The hit detection is better than Battlefield 4, it feels more or less like it was in Battlefield 3. Most of the time when I'm hitting someone, I know I should be hitting them, but occasionally I'll shoot at someone and feel like I should have killed them when I just didn't. But thankfully it's not a huge issue like it was in Battlefield 4. Two things I don't really know how I feel about. One is the bayonet charge. This thing can be very frustrating because it just kind of seems buggy. If you don't know, if you are sprinting and you have a gun that's a bayonet on it, and you hold down the melee button, you go into this bayonet charge that will be a one-hit kill. Obviously people can shoot you out of this, but having a one-hit kill kind of come out of nowhere, or having someone survive a million bullets and then bayonet charge you and kill you, can be really frustrating at times. But at the same time, it also feels incredibly satisfying when you do it, so it's one of those things where you love it when you do it, you hate it when other people do it. I still feel like it's kind of annoying and can be a little bit game-breaking at times, but as a whole, it's not something that has been so awful that I don't want to play the game. Someone surviving long enough to run through your bullets and bayonet charge you is something that happens so infrequently, but when it does happen, it's so frustrating, you just want to murder a clown. Thankfully, they did not bring back the counter-knifing system in Battlefield 4, and it more or less works like it did in Battlefield 3 or Battlefield Hardline, with different sort of variations of weapons. So only a backstab, and if you hit them in the face, you just slap them in the face. One other thing about the bayonet charge that really got on my nerves is that it seems pretty glitchy. A lot of times when I'm sprinting and I hold down the melee button, I'll just swing my melee weapon instead of doing a bayonet charge, and this has gotten me killed a lot. I don't know what causes this, but it is one of those frustrating things of, oh, I died when I shouldn't have. The second thing I don't really know how I feel about are the elite classes. This sort of works almost like Battlefront, the DICE Battlefront, not the old games, where at some point throughout the map, throughout the game, an elite class will spawn somewhere on the map. It alerts everyone, so anyone can go pick it up. You can either get a flamethrower unit, a crazy overpowered SMG that has like 3000 RPM or something ridiculous, this thing kills so quickly, a heavy armored LMG sort of tank unit, or an anti-tank elite class that has a huge rifle that will kill in one shot, and a double-barreled shotgun. Now the reason I don't know how I feel about this is because while you're using it, it is so fun to be that overpowered, but in general, I'm not a huge fan of these because it makes a huge balance issue of, oh, they can kill you easily, while you have to work very hard just to kill them. In general, anything that makes the other player put out more damage and take more damage is something I'm not a huge fan of. But again, it's one of those things that hasn't proven to be entirely game-breaking, so I don't really know how I feel about it. And again, using it yourself is really satisfying, even if it is horribly broken, and you know it's just kinda cheap. I mean, I frequently will drop everything I am doing in that match to run for these kits. Alright, now let's talk about the things I dislike about Battlefield 1. Now, again, just to reiterate, this game is a lot of fun, and a lot of the reason I'm just kind of ragging on it here is because it could be even more fun, and these are just things that I dislike. For starters, this is a small thing that I hope they will patch. I prefer toggle aiming, because having to hold down right mouse click and then click left mouse click and aim is just awkward for me. So toggle aim is always my thing. But I've noticed in this game, if you try to go directly from sprint into aiming, say I'm sprinting and I right mouse click and let go, it'll do the ADS animation and bring my gun up to my face and then just unscope. For no reason. If I want to actually scope out a sprint, I have to hold the button down until the animation is done and then let go. That is not toggle. That's like a weird in-between toggle hold. I really hope they patch this. This has gotten me killed so many times. The second thing I dislike, I know I said the maps are made a lot better, but the tanks are definitely overpowered. And the reason they are overpowered is because you don't really have as valid means to fight them. You have dynamite, which is essentially like C4. You put a few dynamite charges onto a tank and then you can blow it up. This is obviously not the best option most of the time, and you can't just run up to a tank and say, here you go, have some dynamite. They're not going to sit still and be happy about that. So when you do that, it's really satisfying, but again, that's the same as C4, not usually viable. Not everyone in this game also has an RPG. Instead, they have a rifle that shoots one shot, then you have to reload. This sounds kind of like an RPG, except for you have to have this mounted, so you either need to go prone or put it on a windowsill, or essentially use it like it as a bipod. This obviously makes things a lot more complicated. You can't just run out into the open, shoot at a tank, run away. You have to actually stop and stand still and shoot, and most of the time you're just going to die by the tank or anyone else trying to shoot you before you can really do that. So you don't really have a valid means to fight the tanks, and the tanks have way too much health. I think the tanks need to have health lowered, and that would be much better. Because as it stands, they can take a ton of damage, you can't really output a bunch of damage, and they can kill you in one shot. It's just very frustrating. Similarly to the tanks, there are horses in this game that I really don't like. When you get on a horse and start riding the horse around, you can pull out a sword that will be a one-hit kill. The most frustrating thing about this is that the sword feels like it has 10 to 15 feet of range. They'll be nowhere near you and you instantly die for no reason. Horses are obviously faster and more maneuverable than you as well, so avoiding them is very difficult. To make matters worse, the horse has a stupidly huge amount of health. It will survive an anti-tank grenade. What? To make things more annoying, and don't quote me on this, it feels like the rider has more health. If you try to shoot the rider, you can just put hit marker after hit marker into him, and I don't know what the game's registering that you're actually hitting the horse or the person, but it's much more difficult to shoot the person off the horse than you think it would be. I really want to see some nerfs done to the horses. They're just very frustrating. Now those two things I could more or less ignore and just keep playing the game, but this last one, this has been the bane of my existence in Battlefield 1 so far. The guns are too weak. Now this is a controversial opinion and people go back and forth about it in the Battlefield community, but I don't see why DICE has made guns weaker ever since Battlefield 3. I thought Battlefield 3 got it right. Assault rifles, 4-shot kill. SMGs, depending on the SMG, the UMP could be a 3-shot kill up close, but the damage dropped off quickly. Most SMGs killed somewhere between 3 to 5 shots. I mean, I thought this was perfect, and the DMRs are 2-shot kill. Why did guns need to get weaker? Ever since Battlefield 4, the guns simply have been incredibly weak, and this has been driving me insane. Light machine guns in Battlefield 1 take 5 shots to kill max damage. Keep in mind, they will get weaker over time, so you're probably going to have to shoot them more than that. This is infuriating, and it has kind of made light machine guns almost worthless, to be honest. The regular semi-auto rifles take 3 shots to kill. The SMGs take 5 shots to kill, max damage, and their damage drops off very quick. So again, my biggest complaint is that bullets, it takes too many bullets to kill people, and I really wish every gun in the game was simply stronger. Make DMRs 2 shots again, make SMGs kill somewhere between 3 to 5 shots, make light machine guns kill in 4 shots. I don't know why they didn't do this. It's very frustrating to shoot someone 4 times and have them stay alive with somewhere between 1 to 10 health. That should have killed them. But at the end of the day, when my biggest complaint is something I figured I'd know DICE would do to begin with, that's really not all that bad. And Battlefield 1 is a fantastic, fun game that, again, looks beautiful. So, I said this before, but if you want to buy it, go ahead and buy it. You're not going to regret your purchase. It's definitely not dying anytime soon. Battlefield 4 is still alive, and that game had a terrible launch, whereas Battlefield 1's launch just kind of works and doesn't really have any major issues. So thanks for listening to me rant, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.